Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Today I'm going to be painting these beautiful flowers and these grow extremely well here at Dandelion Cottage. In fact, they're doing so well I'm going to have to thin them out a little bit. But they're lovely and they're about 4 feet, maybe even 4.5 feet high, and they make wonderful cut flowers. Now last time, or I should say last year, when I painted these in the watercolor sketchbook, I didn't get very far. As you can see, I only got one side of the 2-page spread layout. So I thought this would be a really good time to get caught up with the rest of the flowers here. So that's what we're going to do. For this picture, I'm going to be using just 3 colors, yellow, red, and blue. And I've got a couple of paint brushes here. I've got a large and a small, and the large is a 7, the small is a 4. And I'm just checking to make sure that we are broadcasting, and that looks fine. And the flowers are this beautiful, deep, golden yellow, almost orange, just the deepest yellow. And then the center is a little bit darker, but it also has some of that yellow. And if you look very closely, you can see the pattern on the center of the flower. And in fact, all those little things, I think, are the actual flowers, and the petals are just providing landing area for the pollinators. So when you have a daisy-shaped flower growing in your garden, whether it's a daisy, a sunflower, echinacea, whatever the case may be, a lot of times those flowers are designed to support butterflies and bees, the insects that land on the surface of the flower and pick up the pollen and bring it to the next flower. And butterflies in particular really favor a flower that has a platform. Another one is yarrow. So if you're familiar with the yarrow flower, it's a nice flat surface. So I'm just tearing off a little piece of paper towel here to rest my hand on, and I'm going to add my next wash of color. So this, if I zoom you in, my pencil drawing already has the palest wash just to get it started. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to the second step in terms of value. And I'm avoiding painting in the areas where I want my lightest lights to be. So I want to have a little bit of a reflected area that shows where the highlight is. And I'm making my way around the petals. And what's really pretty about these petals, and let me see if I can show you that, they have these wonderful little veining so that the petals aren't absolutely flat. They undulate. So there's a central kind of a bump, and then there are the two lateral areas that have this wonderful shape. And what that means is that as I work my way around, the light is going to affect those shapes differently because of the light source that's coming from my upper left. So a light side and a shadow side. All right, so that would be my second wash. Let me get that so that you can see well. That only took a minute or two. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my red, mix it in with the yellow and a dash of the blue, and that's going to give me this kind of a brownish tonality that I can use to begin to indicate the texture. Okay, so the center has a lot of texture going on. The one side of it is collecting the light, the other side is in shadow. So I can get that started just like that. And then I can go back into my red and my blue and add a little bit more to the shadow side. Okay, so that's going to begin to indicate the shape of that. Going back to my yellow mixture, this time with a little more red, so it's slightly darker yellow, and I can start to draw with my brush the shapes of these lines on the petals, and I can just let that run into the damp center that I just painted. So the watercolor is going to mix all on its own. I don't even have to help it because it's still damp. Okay, now with a clean brush that I've removed excess moisture from, I can just touch these areas that are damp on the side away from the center of the flower and just start to blend that with the previous wash of color that I put on there. Okay, so you can see now that the flower is beginning to take form. Using the point of my brush, I'm doing a little more careful observation and sketching. In the areas where I want the highlight to be, I'm not adding this extra line. I'm just letting that kind of fade away. The petals, even though they're extremely thin, they do have a slight thickness. And that, by adding that, it helps to show the edge against the white of the paper. And then on this side, where the petals begin to turn away from the light, they go back into shadow. So I can make that a little bit darker, just like so. Again, with the plain water, I'm just going to blend that so it's got a softer transition going into the shade. All right, and so now I'm going to take my darkest yellow mixture, this time with less water, more pigment, and I'm just going to drop a little bit of that right onto the damp areas, and that's going to gently bleed into the last application of paint and just make a beautiful transition, like so. Right, now I have to get back to the center of that flower, give that a little more attention. So this time I'm taking a stronger mixture of my red and my blue. I'm making kind of a blue-violet, and I'm adding just a little bit of that yellow to tone it down. And I'm going to pick out just a little bit of the characteristics. So there is a center with a kind of a darker ring around it, and then the cast shadow. All right, now I want to get the stem, so this time mixing up a medium green with my yellow and my blue. I can get that started. I'm going to add a little more yellow as that stem comes out from under the shade of the flower, the cast shade. So it's going to get a little more of a yellow quality. And then I'm going to let that just fade off for now. I've got a leaf over here, and I'm going to do the same kind of idea. So with a yellow green, I can begin to indicate that toothy edge to the side of the leaf. I'm going straight down the center, and then on the other side the same thing, but this time I'm not going to go quite to the center of the leaf. So I'm reserving that initial light tone to use to describe the central vein of the leaf. I'm just going to continue to make my way down the other side of the page. Using the tip of my brush to get into those pointy edges, just like so. And because I'm working in the gutter here, I'm just going to soften that and let that fade away. So there's the, so if we think of the first wash as that very, very pale yellowish tone that was originally on the sketch here, I've added a slightly darker green, avoiding that area, and now what I can do is I can add my middle tone, which is a stronger mixture of the yellow and blue, still keeping it in the medium green family. And I can add a little shadow along the side of that vein. And now I can begin to model the shape of that leaf. So this area can be turning away from the light, more into the shade, so slightly darker, just helping that along a little bit. Same over here. Let that fade away. Now, if I look closely at the leaf, I can see, let me show you. So here's our leaf. There's the center vein, and you see it also has these lateral veins that sort of curve out from the center. So I'm going to indicate a few of those. And I'm going to add a darker green now in these areas that are in the shadow. So for instance, here on the stem where it's emerging out from under the flower. Same over here. Continuing on this page. I'm just going to let this fade off for now. Okay, so the leaf is fairly wet right now, so I'm going to let that set up. And while that is drying a bit, I'm going to go back to the center of my flower, and now I'm going to add my darkest accents, and we'll be done with that. So now I've got a almost a yellowish red, so there's a lot of red in this mixture. And I'm just testing to see how wet this is, and it's still a little damp, so I may have to just let that dry a little bit more. I can get it started. But in order for it to hold a line and not blend with the surrounding areas, I have to let it dry a little bit more. And I don't want to use my heat tool. I want it to dry naturally so that I don't disturb the surface of the paint. So I'll just leave that alone for now. But what I can do is take one very dark accent. This time it's a almost pure blue-violet paint on the brush. There's hardly any moisture. And if I just put a couple of little marks in the cast shadow from the center of the flower, this is sort of a kind of a cone-shaped button, and so it does rise up above the petals and it does cast a shadow, so I can use that to create a beautiful rich dark. Alright, so there is a quick lesson on shading a flower. I'm going to put one more stroke. I'm getting a dark green now. This is a very dark green, and I can just add that to my leaf in the shadow areas. Now, I know this is the center of the book and it doesn't matter so much. However, I do need to tone this down a little bit. So as that the center vein is a paler tone, but as it descends into the shade, it does get a little bit darker. So I don't want that to jump quite that much. It's a little jumpy. So I'm going to tone that down so that it blends a little bit better. All right, so there it is. I'm going to continue around the design. This motif is just sort of a central motif in the gutter. I may add a little bit extra up on the top here. I'm thinking about possibly adding a butterfly because they are busy out there as we're painting. And I also have the Butterfly Tribe meetup that I'm going to be going to in a week or two. So the Butterfly Tribe is a group of women who love to go car camping. They have tents, SUVs, vans, and big RV vehicles, and they all get together all around the country and hang out at these meetups for 2 or 3 days. So I'm going to be going to one in Hopeville Pond State Park in southern Connecticut, and I'm going to be sharing butterflies with the Butterfly Tribe ladies. So anybody who's interested in getting a butterfly kit, and let me show you what you make with the kit. It looks something like this. All right, so these are going to be available just to the people who are at the meetup, and we're going to be putting these dangles together, and they can be used to hang from the let me get that back on there. They can be used to hang from your rear view mirror so that you can be identified as a member of the Butterfly Tribe, so that when we are dispersed around the campground, we'll be able to find one another. So more about that on the Facebook page called Butterfly Tribe, and you'll find under the event sections different meetups all across the country. So there's bound to be one near you. So that's all for now. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a paper crafting project of a banner specifically for this meetup, and it's going to have a lot of really fun decorations and all different types of elements added to it. So stay tuned for Paper Crafting Thursday tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be putting some of the banner together. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.